Oh, sorry.
John, do you know what I
Turn your mic.
remember you saying during one of the meetings? If you're going to make me wear a
This is
mask,
recorded.
you have to buy me the N95 mask. You weren't gonna wear this. You said, if you make me do it, you buy me one. I remember that very specific, because isn't Mike's an N95?
KN95.
Or whatever is the, yeah. But you said you would wear it, but you're gonna have to buy me one. Do you remember saying that? I remember it. Because I thought you wouldn't wanna wear this. You said you would do it. If you're gonna make me do it, you buy it and I'll wear it.
Yeah, the only thing the KN95 does is it protects the user. And that's my point is, if you guys are so concerned, even though you're vaccinated, wearing a KN95 protects you. That's known fact.
I don't know, with my asthma, I feel better. I'm back to wearing it all the time. So, yeah, because I never know.
Good evening. It is Monday, December 13th. It is 7:09. My apologies for the late start. Our workshop went over, so thank you for your patience and grace. With that, I'm calling our meeting to order. Please stand if you are able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. I am looking for a motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill.
Second.
Second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting the agenda as is? Please-
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We're good. First item of business this evening is the public hearing, and I'm going to turn that over to Clarissa to lead us through.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me okay? Now that we've had that discussion. So this is the Truth in Taxation hearing for the 2022 levy. We have talked about this a number of times, and I'm going to essentially kind of go through slide by slide. I might just dub over this with the slideshow on the video. We'll see how that goes. But because you've heard it, just in case people decide to watch the YouTube video, we'll go through this. So just a kind of a quick outline. We'll go through important dates, the purpose of budgeting, a few budget points, and then go through the details of the levy and the general fund budget, as well as the debt service levy. We started this process way back this spring, but here are some of the dates that are included in the budget, kind of the formal budget process. So we adopted the preliminary levy, also called the proposed levy, in September. That is due to the county by the end of September, so that does need to be adopted then. In October, we adopted the JPA budget. So we have a JPA with independence for two different departments. We have West Hennepin Public Safety, which is managed by Director Curls and through the Police Commission. And then we have the Maple Plain Fire Department, which is managed by the City of Maple Plain. Those budgets were then adopted on October 2nd, or 22nd. In November, the county sends out tax notices. We did include this year a kind of a handout because kind of outlined the increases that we were looking at, just to kind of try and prepare people in advance. Today is December 13th, so we are having this Truth in Taxation hearing. That's such a huge turnout here. And then we will hope to adopt that final budget and levy on December 20th. So the purposes of budgeting, we just need to figure out what we're spending on. So accounting for today's costs and also save for future needs. Typically, a city will find some combination of utilizing debt and saved capital to pay for large purchases. So prepare for known and unknown expenses. So we have certain costs that we know about, but and so you could consider those kind of our hard costs. But then we also have sort of these flexible costs, the things that we don't really know about, whether or not we will have that expenditure in any given year. We need to decide how and where to invest financial resources. Obviously, my dad says money does not grow on trees. I think we've all learned that. And so, with limited finite resources, we need to figure out where exactly we're going to spend those in this community. Budgeting is used for management and oversight of city operations. So they create both a guideline and a policy. So guideline in that budgets are generally our best guess at what something is going to cost, how much money that we're going to expend. But because our operations include both hard fixed costs and more flexible costs, they are also, we would consider them a guideline. But they also create a policy in that, we're fixing the levy for the year. We utilize our practices to establish amounts that we're going to expend in any particular department. We establish through the budgeting process certain wages and other expenditures, which would be kind of considered more of a policy. And then, of course, we use budgeting to show how a city uses public tax dollars. So it's for accountability and transparency of how we are expending public funds. So a few budget points and kind of some sort of background and how we got here and where we're going. So we have new management in both administration and fire. And because of this new management, we have done quite a bit more review of processes, budgets, and expenditures. We'll review some historical data. I'll get into that a little bit more in depth. And then we've been looking a lot at how to move forward sustainably, and sustainably in the financial sense. So keeping budgeting in line with policy and practices, making sure we're maintaining our general fund balances, and then building up those capital fund balances for future investments, and also getting a good handle on our past investments and those expenses, so that debt service. I'm just going to review. Hold on 1 second. I had some notes I need to make sure I address. Okay. So again, new management. I've been here since February, have learned a lot, dug into our expenditures almost right off the bat, trying to kind of figure out, where the budget numbers came from and what they should be based on. So various contracts and policies, et cetera. I have 8 years in public administration, 3 as an administrator, and then 15 years of self-employment. I am very comfortable with numbers and love a good spreadsheet. Ray McCoy, as fire chief, has also done a lot of digging into his budgets. 45 years on the fire department, roughly 13 years as police chief, also knows his way around a budget. So we have both done very thorough review of processes, budgets, and expenditures. Started before we took our roles as with the finance committee, working with Abdoik and Myers, simplifying the chart of accounts, reviewed and AEM created the fire budget. We've been reviewing practices and expenditures and documenting those so that we, our budgets are simplified, but we have supporting documentation and numbers too, as far as where those numbers came from. And then, of course, discussions with the finance committee, council review at multiple workshops and meetings, and then reviews by those commissions that address those JPAs, so the fire commission and the police commission. So a bit of historical data. So we've seen rising market values, of course. This is, starting in, you can see the decrease the recession decrease that ended in 2012, we started seeing the market values go back up in 2013. So we've seen that median single-family home has increased from 160 to 278 in that time frame since 2012. Historical levies. So we've seen levies increase, and I've got a slide later on that will break this down a little bit. But so the red line is the general fund levy. You can see where the debt levy started increasing around 2013, 2014 when you started implementing some of those larger reconstruction projects. And so I've listed a number of kind of summary points over there to the left. And I did fix the packet. That bottom bullet point had the incorrect levy number there, and that 10-year average is actually 2.65 instead of 2.8 or something that was in the packet. Excuse me. Let's see, anything I want to point out here. I would just add, I like to look at things, so these bullet points are really kind of summary. I like to look at things within various averages just to kind of compare with each other, compare with other cities, compare with the market. And so those are just kind of different tools that I use in trying to interpret things over time. I should point out here that the levy has stayed the same or very close to the same for the 4 years prior to this. I believe it was 4 years. So because of the levy staying the same for a number of years, you guys have had a decreasing tax rates. So we peaked with a tax rate of about 79.5% in 2015, and we are down to about, this chart shows 55.83, so somewhere in that 55.5-ish range in 2021. The projected tax rate is coming up on the county site currently for 2022 as another over 1% decrease. I think what did we calculate it at, John? 1.74-ish decrease, so down to about 53 3/4, I think. Just a chart on medium family home. The line, there's a few extra lines that just kind of show some various increases, whether it's a 2%, 3%, so that was kind of extra. But median family home prices, as mentioned earlier, have been rising over time. Oh, sorry, this is the tax on the median family home. Sorry, my apologies. So the tax has been rising, but not as fast as those market values. And I would mention that in that, again, kind of post-2013, there has been a lot of capital investment. So it's not like these increases are due to operations. The general fund operations budgets have stayed relatively steady, or the levy, sorry, have stayed relatively steady. It's the debt service that has increased. And then actually the tax on the median family home, because the median family home value jumped so much, the tax on that home actually decreased in 2021. So moving forward, my number one goal for any city that I work in is financial sustainability. So that is taking into account the goals of council, making sure that we have as much information as possible to sort of assess and verify that our current practices are sustainable long term. So can we maintain a certain tax rate long term? Are funds maintaining appropriate balances and such? So number one step, budgeting in line with policy and practices. Budgets, again, are guidelines based on these practices and should reflect those as accurately as possible. So budget for reality. And that's not to say that those policies and practices can't change, but we just want to budget for what we think, or we're fairly certain we are going to need to spend, and then certainly look for opportunities for savings along the way. Unknown expenses come up no matter how much I try to avoid them. It feels like a weekly occurrence. So there just needs to be a little bit of wiggle room in a budget. We've taken some of that wiggle room this year and implemented the contingency line item, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then maintaining general fund balances is very important. We have a general fund balance policy of 60%, so we dropped below that, I believe, at the end of 2020, and we're, depending on what we implement for that CIP transfer, we could see another drop in that balance, so we want to make sure we maintain that. Plan ahead for capital improvements and special projects. So my very rough estimate is roughly $400,000 per year. And this is an average over time general fund based on very, estimated costs and estimated life of the assets. Long-term planning, how do current operations and future needs look from a big picture perspective? So this kind of goes back to that long-term plan. That is, it's going to be a work in process, but how do things look? Obviously, we make some assumptions on tax capacity increases and inflation, so everything's really just kind of a guess at this point, but it's a good way to kind of keep tabs on where we're going moving forward. So are our current operations and current tax rates sustainable? How do we plan for the future? Long-term planning, I would certainly advocate for planning for smaller year-to-year increases and maintaining that tax rate when possible. And I've talked about this before, but it leaves you, it kind of creates that buffer that you need for when things decrease or when the surprises happen. And then, of course, plan well in advance for policy and budget changes. So, you're never locked into any type of policy or practice. We just want to make sure that we're planning well in advance for those and not, budgeting too low or, too low of expenditures or too high of revenues if they're not guaranteed. So we are looking at a currently proposed levy increase of 6.9%. Again, this is an iteration, couple iterations beyond what we had originally put in the proposed levy. So we're down a little bit from there. The average over the 5-year average is actually just 1.12%, which probably is roughly what inflation has been for the last 5 years, not including this past year probably. So the total levy, you're looking at $1,568,101. Dollar change, that's $101,221. 26% of that is due to debt service. 74% of the increase, is due to the general fund levy. So this chart just kind of shows you the levy history by levy type. So we have the general fund levy is in orange, debt service levy is in yellow. You'll notice, if I can figure out how to do this, our proposed 2022 general fund levy is roughly equal to the 2016 general fund levy. Just a quick recap on revenues. So we have our total revenues as well as our projected total expenses is at $1,710,598. So it's a balanced budget. Non-tax revenues are expected to hold relatively steady. I was somewhat conservative on those non-tax revenues just because I am still learning and I didn't want to, again, overestimate those revenues. Property taxes currently account for about 76% of our general fund revenues, and LGA accounts for about 15% of general fund revenues. Maple Plain is actually significantly less dependent on LGA than the last city I was in. So I think that's a positive, just because that LGA has been pretty consistent in recent years, but during this recession, a lot of cities took a huge hit when they decreased LGA. So expenditures, generally, again, I like to budget accurately for current levels of service, policies, and practices. So the expenditures are as close as I could get them. I will add that, again, I'm still learning, still new. And so there are things that have even kind of popped up here in the last couple months that I'm needing to kind of add to my itemized lists to make sure that we account for them in the future. So we're looking for an overall general fund increase of 2.71% over the 2021 budget. Now, the increases are actually similar across categories, and I'll get into categories versus departments here in a minute. The reason it's only 2.71% is because we decreased the overall impact by lowering our CIP set aside. And I'll talk more about that in a bit too. So we are, so 2.71% over 2021 budget. However, it is a decrease of almost 7% from 2019 actual expenditures. So this does include, general fund, often largely operations, but this amount does include transfers to our own capital account, as well as we contribute to CIP for both police and fire. So the next two slides are very similar, but they're broken down first by department and then by category. And so category is just kind of a summary of departments. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but so you've got the 2021 budget, 2022 draft budget, dollar amount change, and then percentage change within all of these. Category-wise, we have general government, so administration, council, facilities, elections, and then a couple kind of miscellaneous smaller things, I believe. Or they're actually listed there. And then public safety includes both fire and police. Public works includes public works, general account, streets, parks, and then capital set-asides and contingencies. So you'll see kind of similar increases. Public works, not quite as high, and then we've decreased our capital set-asides to balance the other increases. So an overall general fund increase of 2.71%. So this chart kind of outlines the general government. So again, council, administration, elections, legal, planning, buildings, and then building inspections. Policies haven't changed too much. We're addressing some cost of living increases. We've got a lot of contracts in this category, so we're dealing with those contract increases. We decreased some training budgets in both council and administration to balance the budget. And we've tried to kind of outline some of our goals here. We're trying to invest time in stronger financial systems, communications. There will be a 2022 election. Obviously, we didn't have an election this year, so that 8,000 actually contributes a lot of that increase to this category for 2022. And then we're going to try and dedicate some additional time to code enforcement. That will be a larger discussion in the future when it comes to how aggressive we want to get from the legal end of that, as those do get very costly. So overall 2022 budget effects, this category accounts for a little over 28% of the general fund budget. So increase of 8.85 from the 2021 budget, but only a just over 2% increase from the 2019 actual. So I separated out police from that public safety, police and fire from that public safety category, just because they're JPAs and it's easier to discuss those. So a lot of impacts from police. The plan is to maintain the current level of service, staffing levels. However, due to some loss in revenues and a need to rebuild the capital fund and increase those set-asides and paying down debt, so compensated absences due to some retirements, we are looking at an 8% increase from their 2021 budget. And they account for 31% of the Maple Plain budget. And again, this is there was a typo in the packet, so it's 31%, not 37%. But so obviously that 8% increase, any increase on their end is going to be a significant increase to us simply because there's such a high percentage of our budget. Fire accounts for just over 12% of our budget. Again, kind of new leadership. We're trying to get a better handle on those service levels and seeking ways to maintain budgets and maintain staffing hours. So doing a lot of digging into how those funds are spent and what a realistic money amount for those budgets are. Ray's got very detailed budgets, so any of that kind of deeper information is available upon request if anyone is interested. And then just trying to maintain readiness and develop our staff for, we've got some newer people that need additional training. That training is done by existing staff, so we're kind of sort of double hit from the training hours perspective. So we're looking at just under 8% increase from the 2021 budget. Again, this is the budget, not necessarily, their expenditures were higher than their budgets were, I believe, for the last 2 years. So we do believe that the expenditures are a realistic representation of their activities without actually changing too much. There is some catch-up that needs to be done with some equipment purchases, I believe, though. Public Works, Parks and Streets, so we're just kind of lumping Public Works all together. Maintaining that people service contract. I believe we're under contract with them for another couple of years. Trying to push for higher levels of service within those contract terms. And minimize those outside, kind of other costs. We've had a lot of turnover there, so there's a learning curve, so I'm really hoping to see some future efficiencies. We've also had Sean has been in, so we have Dylan who's full-time, and then Sean has been in kind of an as-needed and part-time basis quite a bit in the last couple months. Getting caught up on various projects and just looking back, so it appears that we've cut budgets significantly compared to in-house labor. Those combined Public Works actual numbers from 2018, 2019 are significantly higher than what our budgeted numbers are for 2022. So 5.10% increase from the 2021 budget. Again, still significantly lower than 2018 to 2020 actuals. And Public Works departments account for roughly 14.5% of our general fund budget. Obviously, there is also Public Works type expenses in our utility funds as well. Capital set-asides and contingencies. So again, we've created this contingency line item to address and kind of minimize some of the more flexible department expenses. So some of the miscellaneous and the repairs that are sort of these maybes. We moved into a contingency account and then only budgeted for a percentage of those. We did decrease the capital set aside to increase or to compensate for the increases in operations in other departments, and then we are planning on stopping the transfer to the water fund that was occurring. Our accountant, Bonnie, and I both prefer to have those utility funds be self-sufficient and not be transferring from the general fund. Budget effects, 34% decrease. Again, this is essentially what we use to balance the budget increase. So this portion does account for almost 8% of our general fund budget. Now, I just pointed out real quick, we've been transferring, I believe it's 173.5 to CIP in years past, and that's been consistent for a number of years. You may recall in our long-term planning process, we have a pretty detailed CIP, and again, kind of this estimate of costs and lifespan. So a very, very rough estimate for general fund capital set-asides is roughly $400,000 per year. So we definitely need to increase this in the future if we're going to keep up with those, rebuilding our facilities long-term. The next few slides are just kind of breakdowns of these categories. Again, I'm not going to go through these in detail, but they are available for your review. And then I just wanted to draw attention to that debt service. So again, this is the overall levy. You've seen this slide before. I just want to kind of draw your attention to this debt service portion of that. So this is a breakdown for the last few years. So we've got started the year last year with 2012 and 2013. We've refunded those, so those have gone away in 2022, and we've added this refunding bond. I think we ended up saving roughly $15,000 per year by refunding those at a lower rate, and then we added the 2021 bond, which is our reconstruction project for this year. So our total debt service, $256,815, increase of about just over $26,000. This accounts for 11%. That's an 11% increase over 2021, and accounts for 26% of the total levy increase. And that is it. Who's ready for a nap? Questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you for that very detailed presentation. Any questions for staff?
I believe we need a hearing
Yeah.
also.
With that, I am looking for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill,
I'll second.
second by DeLong. All in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. The public hearing is open at 7:41. The public hearing is open if there's anyone to come forward to speak. The public hearing is open if there's anyone to come forward that would like to speak. And one last chance. The public hearing is open if there's anyone who'd like to come forward to speak. All right. Having no one come forward, I am looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Moved by Councilmember DeLuca.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Fay. All in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. The public hearing is closed at 7:42.
I'd like to make a comment. Clarissa, I want to applaud your diligence in crunching through budgets this year. I've been involved with the fire budget all year. Councilmember DeLuca and I have been on ad hoc finance committee along with you, so I feel as though I've been abreast of how this entire process has gone, and you have really taken a professional approach, diligent. You're a spreadsheet aficionado, and I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work, and this was a fantastic presentation. So hopefully someone will watch it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I ditto that. Awesome job. I feel like we actually have a grip on things now, and I spent my entire day today putting together about a 25-page PowerPoint presentation. You probably could have done it in an hour. So that's just it's nice to see the work that you're doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other feedback or comments? There's no other business before us this evening, so with that, I am looking for a motion. Oh,
I would
sorry.
just clarify, so I assume that there are no changes to the budget moving forward, and that what we've presented essentially what council would like to see on Monday night for final approval.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
With that, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by DeLuca,
I'll second.
second by DeLong. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The meeting is adjourned at 7:44.
Yes.